this company built the ships. Japanese company built the ships.
Yeah.
And they built a ship for this run, and they invited the then manager of supply, who was an Arab, to go and launch it, go part of the launching ceremony. And he didn't want to go because this was shortly after 9/11, I seem to remember, and he thought, it would not be safe for him to travel. Anyway, he said, you can go and represent the company, which I did. And they took all those photographs that went in that album that's in the bookcase there. And they literally were taking photographs as we were going around and doing the ceremony, and then presented it to me when at the end of the day. I thought it was a tremendous gesture, really.
This is obviously when you were working in Dubai then, was it?
Yeah, I was working out of Dubai then.
Yeah,
and flew to Japan to launch this vessel. Yeah, it was a bit special, and we planted a tree as well. Was the other thing we did. Yes.
As one does, yes.
Yeah.
All right, tell me about the broken flywheel incident.
The broken
flywheel? Was it a flywheel? Was it broken something?
Oh, yeah. No, it was a
or a gear or something like that.
It was a gear ring.
Okay.
It was a gearing. It was probably about in diameter, probably 10 or 12 feet in diameter.
It's a big gear.
A huge gear, and it laid flat on the within the machine on the base of it, and then it had a little pinion wheel on the outside that drove this. It was a digger.
Right.
So that was the means by which it pivoted.
Right.
Around this big gear wheel.
This is in Luoyang, wasn't it? You said.
When I was at Luoyang, yeah, which I had all sorts of problems with. Anyway, it's one day, as I stepped inside the warehouse on my way to the part of the plant where I had to go to look at some castings, I heard this ting. And I thought, oh, that doesn't sound good to me. That does not sound good to anyone. And this sharp intake of breath from these Chinese guys, and a lot of babbling went on. I thought, oh, interesting, and kept walking. And when I came back, they were all gone, but they'd used a substance called dye check, and you sprayed it on, and that would onto a casting, and it would show you whether there were any cracks or whatever in it. So I thought, this is interesting. So I could see where they sprayed this dye check on the web of this gear wheel. So the gear teeth were probably about that tall, and the web inwards was about a couple of feet, I suppose,
Yeah, right.
So I thought, okay, so I took a photograph of it. And the next day I saw that they had drilled out the inner part of the thing, of the crack on the web, and there's more dye check on it. And every day when I went there, I just took a photograph of it, and not realising why I was doing it. I'm just more of an interest, I think. And anyway, eventually over a period of several days, they closed this whole thing up and ground it all out and filled it all with welding, and it was all buffed up and all looking really nice and shiny, ready to go. And then I saw a group of 3 Indians sitting around it, and I introduced myself, and they said they were from the Indian Railways somewhere or other, and they had been tasked to come over and inspect this gear wheel. And I can't think of it. It has a special name, I can't think of it. And I said, oh, he said, I understand they had a little crack in it. I said, it was more than a little crack. I said, but I've got some photographs if you're interested. And he said, oh yeah, fair enough. So I said, look, I've got to go into the plant now. I said, on my way out, I'll call by where they've been given a room in the building to use as an office. I said, I'll call by your office and show you what I got. So I then assembled all the photos into a electronic folder, and when I showed them what I got, they were absolutely astonished. I said, we weren't told this. He said, we didn't know that this sort of damage, that's the sort of damage. I said, well, to me it's pretty serious, Anyway, they apparently called back to India, and they were told they would take the gear wheel, slew ring gear, that's what it was, slew ring gear, that they would take, but they would insist on a replacement free of charge, and which CITIC, which was the company who built it, agreed to provide them with a proper one without breaking. And I said to this Indian guy, I said, when you are not present, when they're making something for you, I said, they can tell you all sorts of stories when you come back on site. And with welding things, I said, you can sometimes hide things so very well that nobody would even understand, what the problem is. Anyway.
So just lucky you were around, took the photos.
Yeah, not lucky for CITIC, unfortunately. But they were a conniving company, and I worked with another guy called John Gross. He was working for another company, and we used to keep an eye on each other's jobs, especially at night time. And I remember calling him up one night when I had gone in to inspect my work was going on, and I said they were having some, what do they call them? Anyway, they were having some bits of gear drilled. It was what do they call it? I forget now anyway. They were having some bits of gear drilled, and this guy John Gross had said to me, I told them that under no circumstances were they to drill it when it's horizontal. They were to tip it up, stand it on its end vertically, and drill the holes. There was some specific reason for this, lining things up or whatever it was called. I can't remember the name of the kid. Anyway, and I came in, I found them, they were doing it horizontally. And so I called him up and said, hey, this is what's happening to your job. He came down and sorted it. But we each of us had, he called me up one night and he said that there was two guys working on night shift, machining some particular bolts. And I said, yeah, and he said, there's only one there. He said, there's two lathes set up, I can see them set up. And we usually didn't let our presence be known to the workers, And I said, okay, thanks very much. So I thought, I won't go in, I'll talk to Mr. Chen, who was the guy in charge of it. And Mr. Chen, when I went in the morning, he was all full of apologies and in his nice shiny suit and shiny black shoes, and I said, you didn't do as you promised to do. Put two machinists on, there's only one. Anyway, got that sorted. Yeah, the company, the work they did was good if you kept an eye on it. But if you didn't, then they would go off and do it their way rather than the way that you wanted it done. Yeah. And usually the way we wanted it done was for specific reasons, But they found it easier to do it another way, they would try and get away with doing it another way.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Big plant that was, a mile square.
Yeah, right.
That plant.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
I've got a couple of things I remember you telling me about with your job in Weeper. And one was some sort of tale about stolen fuel and how you found the guy who stole the fuel.
Stolen fuel.
Yes.
Yeah. We had people had keys which unlocked the fuel bowsers, and at the end of the day, and each custodian of a vehicle had a key for the particular fuel that they needed, diesel or petrol. And at the end of the day, we closed the bowser down, and the guy working the bowsers, or the warehouse responsible for the bowsers, noted down the meter reading on the bowser when he knocked off. And he noticed when he came back the next day that there was the equivalent of a 44-gallon drum of fuel missing. And which he reported. And what a lot of people didn't understand was that we put specific dye in the fuel so that it would mark an engine, gaskets and things like that, and remain in the fuel tank. And we looked at all the records of people on duty and everything else, and it was apparently as three of them or four of them, I forget now, who shared a house in Weeper. Company provided a house, and we went round to their place and where they were and tested the fuel, and it had dye in it. So we knew it had been taken from our facility and not from the public facility where it was. And they all lost their jobs.
44 gallons of petrol.
Sorry?
For 44 gallons of petrol.
44 gallons of petrol. In a time when it was relatively cheap, compared to today. Yeah, the thing was that they lost their accommodation because they'd abused it. And that in turn meant that they lost their job because the accommodation came with the job, So 3 of them all gone. Some people did some silly things, like that. We had one guy who damaged a company car, and in Cairns, he was normally based on site, but he had, I think his wife is very sick and in hospital, and he swapped this door out for another door somewhere else. I forget how the whole story came together, but a guy who was a long-term employee, who we'd done the right thing by, when his wife was ill, and when challenged with it, admitted it that he'd done whatever it was he'd done to this door, and he got the sack too. So somebody tried to do the right thing by, and I think it was like a 10-year employee or something like that.
Yeah, right.
There wasn't any short-term employee. Yeah, just strange.
And I think you told me once, I think this is right, there was a new manager in Weeper who was ex-army.
Yes.
Yeah, it didn't work out so well.
Did not work out so well at all. And I also, he was a manager, and he's manager of engineering, and he just did not understand, sort of how things worked. I remember he was the general manager on site was Carl Stewart, and this guy bought an issue to the meeting, and Carl said, "No, we're not going to do that. This is the way we're going to go." And he said it was about timesheets being signed on time, got in on time, and this guy said, "But Carl, I don't think you understand." And I thought, oh dear, you know, you're in for this now. And Carl was a very, very clear, logical thinker, and in this case, very patient, I think. And he said to this guy, "No," he said, "you don't understand. You tell me that you can't get these timesheets in on time." He said, it's not true. They will be got in on time. Do you understand? "But Carl," he said again. I thought, oh God, I felt like sliding under the table. You know, here we go again. Anyway, that was one of the instances that he just could not, understand things. He didn't understand that there's people who have been there longer than him. He's only a newbie, and that they had made it happen beforehand. So no reason why it shouldn't happen now. And
Yes.
I appointed a guy who ex-army, who was a bloody disaster. The only employee that I ever hired that I really stuffed up, you know, that on this guy. Anyway, he didn't last long.
You were saying something of like he was, I don't know if that guy was, or if the other guy, where they were basically trying to order someone to clean up something in a warehouse.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was Jack Miles, that was. Each one of the supervisors had to work a mandatory Saturday on overtime. Well, they didn't get paid overtime, but the workforce got paid overtime. And I thought, Jack Miles, ex-RAAF, and I thought I better go and see Jack, see how he's going. I was a bit sceptical of what he was, and when I walked into the warehouse, Jack saw me, and he tucked his clipboard under his arm and literally marched to me. And I thought, oh Jesus, you know, what's this? What's going on here? And he proceeds to tell me that he told someone to pick up some rubbish, and they'd given him the finger, and he said, we can't have this going on in the warehouse, and I said to him, Jack, I said, how did you tell him? And he said something like, pick that up and put it in the rubbish. I said, oh dear. I said, Jack, this is not the army, it's not the Air Force. I said, you have to ask people nicely for it. I mean, that's the way it is. It's not the forces. You can't. Well, I said, you have to ask people nice. Could you please pick that up and put it in? Well, I don't see any reason why. You know, it's sort of. Anyway, he was eventually persuaded that was the way to get things done. Yeah. Funny guy.
And I remember you telling me a story about Weeper, where I think it was one of our neighbours had parked their car and they'd come out and the car wasn't there and they thought it was stolen.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
Because we lived on the top of a bank to the river, and all the managers' houses faced onto this bank, which was a lot of trees on it, and then it went straight down into the river, and Van
Every?
Sorry?
Every? No.
Van Every, that's the name. You got the name, didn't you? Yeah, when he rushed home to pick up some files from home, and when he came out, his car wasn't there, and he accused the grass mowing people around it of hiding his car. Eventually, it turned out he'd left the engine on, and the car had automatically selected reverse right across the road, straight down the bank. onto the sand at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
It was a fault. It was a foaled falcon, and it was a fault with the falcon that if you did leave it running, sitting in, I think it set it in neutral. I think it would click into a gear and take off. And that wasn't the only time. Another time, a car did that, rammed itself into a security fence. Just by the guy left it running, and it was a fault with the gearbox. Don't know how that came about. Dale Van Every.
Yeah.
They were our neighbours.
Yeah.
Do you remember them at all? The
No,
kids?
I can't
They
remember
had
much
a
of that,
couple of kids. Yeah. I think they're a bit older than you, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this one's a Weeper one, but I remember that you were telling me, it may be, so I've sort of got it in that general pile. You were telling me about a company you're in where you had to track stamps, and you ended up scrapping that tracking of stamps because it was basically its own industry of itself.
Yeah, that was the public transport.
Oh, that was public transport, was it? Okay.
Yeah, they every time we put a stamp on an envelope, like to send out a purchase order or something like that, we had to track these stamps in this log, and it took one person half a day every day just keeping up with the stamps, recording these stamps that have gone out and everything else, and they'd introduce it because somebody had stolen some stamps, proper stamps.
Yeah.
Many years beforehand. I'll stop that. Ridiculous. I'm not feeling very comfortable.
Okay.